The Vorthic Penitentiary floated in the dead space between three dying stars, its obsidian walls designed to contain the galaxy's most dangerous predators. For 3 centuries, it had held creatures that could tear through starship hulls with their bare claws, beings that fed on radiation and thrived in absolute zero, and nightmares that existed partially outside normal spacetime. None of them had ever escaped. Commander Zethkar of the Galactic Correctional Authority stood before the newest arrival's cell, his 4 eyes studying the pathetic creature within. The being was small, barely reaching Zethkar's chest, with pale pink skin that looked impossibly fragile. It had only 2 eyes, positioned awkwardly on the front of its head, and its limbs appeared to be constructed of the flimsiest organic matter. "This is the human?" Zethkar asked, his voice carrying the skepticism that had been building since receiving the transfer orders. His aide, a nervous Threnody named Quill, consulted his datapad with trembling tentacles. "Yes, sir. Prisoner designation, Marcus Chen. Species, Homo sapiens. Convicted of. Well, sir, the charges are quite extensive." Zethkar's primary eyes narrowed. The human sat quietly on its bunk, apparently reading something on a primitive paper medium. It looked harmless enough to house in a juvenile facility, let alone the most secure prison in known space. What could this soft thing possibly have done? Zethkar muttered. The answer came 3 days later. The first sign of trouble was when the Draconian in Cell Block 7, a creature whose breath could melt titanium, stopped eating. The beast, known for its insatiable appetite and hair-trigger temper, had been observed having what appeared to be philosophical discussions with the human through the ventilation system. "Philosophical discussions," Zethkar repeated flatly. "A Draconian, having philosophical discussions." "Yes, sir," Quill replied, his skin cycling through anxious color patterns. "The human appears to have convinced it that its destructive tendencies stem from unresolved childhood trauma. Within a week, the situation had deteriorated further. The void spawn in Cell Block 3, a creature of living shadow that had consumed 17 worlds, had reportedly been seen crying. Not the terrifying wails that usually echoed from its cell during feeding time, but what the guards described as therapeutic sobbing. The human had somehow convinced it that its world-eating habits were a coping mechanism for existential loneliness. "How is this possible?" Zethkar demanded during an emergency staff meeting. "These beings are the apex predators of their respective species. They've terrorized entire sectors." Dr. Vex Ali, the prison's chief psychologist, shifted nervously in her environmental suit. "Sir, I've been monitoring the human's communications. It appears to possess an extraordinary understanding of psychological manipulation and emotional influence. What's more concerning is that it seems to genuinely care about helping these creatures." "Caring?" Zethkar's voice rose to a screech. "These are monsters. They don't need therapy, they need containment." But the human's influence continued to spread. The quantum horror in Cell Block 1, a being that existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously, and had once driven an entire research station to madness just by being observed, had started writing poetry. Bad poetry, according to the human, but poetry nonetheless. The human had convinced it that artistic expression might help it process its multidimensional existence more healthily. The prison's AI systems began reporting impossible readings. Violence among inmates had dropped by 97%. Suicide attempts had ceased entirely. The creatures that had once required constant sedation were now voluntarily attending group therapy sessions conducted through the prison's communication network. Marcus Chen had turned the galaxy's most secure prison into a rehabilitation center. Zethkar found himself standing outside the human's cell at all hours, trying to understand what he was witnessing. The being inside looked so unremarkable, yet it had accomplished what centuries of containment protocols, psychological conditioning, and advanced technology had failed to achieve. "How?" he finally asked, speaking directly to the human for the first time. Marcus looked up from his book, a collection of ancient Earth philosophy, somehow smuggled in despite security protocols. His brown eyes met Zethkar's quad-ocular gaze without fear. "You built a prison for monsters," Marcus said quietly. But you never asked why they became monsters in the first place. They're predators. It's their nature. So are humans, Marcus replied with a slight smile. We're apex predators on our world. We've waged wars that consumed continents, developed weapons that could sterilize planets, and committed atrocities that would make your draconian friend blush. The difference is, we learned that nature isn't destiny. Zethkar felt something shift in his understanding. The charges against you. 17 counts of genocide, 43 counts of war crimes, and the complete extinction of the Kepler colony. Marcus's voice carried no pride, only quiet acceptance. I spent 30 years as humanity's most effective weapon. I was very good at being a monster. What changed? Marcus held up his book. Someone showed me that I had a choice. That understanding why I became what I was didn't excuse what I'd done, but it gave me the power to become something different. The truth hit Zethkar like a gravity wave. They hadn't locked up a monster at all. They had imprisoned someone who understood monsters so completely because he had been one, fought his way back from the abyss, and now dedicated his existence to showing others the same path. You're not here for punishment, Zethkar realized. I'm here because this is where I can do the most good, Marcus confirmed. You built a prison for monsters. But monsters, Commander, are just broken people who never learned how to heal. As Zethkar walked away, he could hear the human's voice carrying through the ventilation system, speaking gently to the Void Hunter in Cell Block 5 about the difference between justice and vengeance. Tomorrow, he decided, he would submit a request to reclassify the Vorthak Penitentiary. After all, it was no longer functioning as a prison. It had become something far more dangerous. A place where monsters learned to become people again. And the most terrifying thing of all was that it was working.